Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. And we've got a different sort of topic today, not one I normally do, but we're going to go a little bit over TPG, or the Timepiece Gentleman, but commonly known as TPG, because there have been a number of happenings over the last few weeks, in particular regarding some information that's been alleged. And I'm going to still use the term alleged, even though there are videos from Anthony, who owns and operates TPG, because again, with things not being known how they worked out legally, haven't been resolved yet, really. That's just the safer way to always refer to things. So we're going to say alleged, or mention alleged a lot. This is not a channel that I've really felt like I never watched the videos. I mean, I'm sure I've seen some over time. I've only ever discussed them twice, to my knowledge, in any depth. I had a long form video about a merchandise lawsuit, and I just kind of walked through the process of that. This was probably 2 years ago. And then one involving a period in the timeline that we will go over. So, hey, Tuna, welcome to the live stream. So, in terms of how I'm going to tackle this, apologies, I'm going to be looking off to the side a lot. I have notes, so on this one, I needed stronger notes than I normally do, because I'm just not familiar well enough with everything that's happened in the timeline. I do want to say, if you want to have more information, you should probably go to Reddit. There's a subreddit called the TP Gentleman subreddit that has basically everything. Now, it is Reddit, so finding stuff is very difficult because it's mostly full of memes. and a lot of stuff gets regurgitated. Like, they'll say something about something that happened 2 years ago or something, and it'll come back up top. So but that's always Reddit. Reddit's kind of difficult to see when you're not dealing in real time, but it is the best source for information, and that's where I've relied on because I didn't ever follow the channel. So kudos to them for putting out a lot of this information. And again, I have a link in the video, so you can go to that. I'll also be linking to a couple of more recent pieces. And that's just how we'll go. So the way I'm going to proceed with this is we're going to go over a timeline. I'll explain kind of what's happened with the channel as with really, really broad strokes, because this is a rabbit hole that like fans or hate viewers or whatever might have really fallen deep into, and there's all sorts of nuance to it. But most of that I don't think is needed for our context. So I'll go over a broad level overview of the timeline. Then we're going to talk about two of the videos that were recently released on the channel, one involving this sort of revealed debt thing that's going on right now, and then one regarding the strategy to get out of it. And after that, we'll kind of do final thoughts, because the main reason I want to talk about this, my area of interest on it, is sort of like, what are the long-term ramifications of this sort of behavior, and what it means for consignments in the used watch space, what it might mean for other used watch dealers. And of course, we'll touch a little bit on if these allegations are indeed true. Like, will the strategy work? Will there be repercussions? What options are out there? We'll kind of explore a little bit of that and see where y'all feel like going with it. But anyway, I'll do my best. Apologies, not my area of focus. Good morning, Neff. Welcome to the live stream. And I will note up front, I'll probably have to remind you all again, though, no, I'm sure all of you will remember, but I'm not an attorney, so nothing I say is to be construed as legal advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say should be construed as giving you financial advice. Not that I think we're really going to touch that topic here today. I will probably reference some legal items in this, though, but just bear in mind, these are my interpretations as a layperson. So yeah, kinda. Yeah, that's the thing. So again, not a channel I normally follow, but I do follow the subreddit, the TP Gentleman subreddit. Link in the description on that. And so we'll go over a few pieces recently in terms of what's been going on, because I think we need to lay some groundwork on the timeline. So I think I've got little tickers and everything. I've gotten really fancy today. I worked this up really well. So hopefully we get to a whole 10 viewers. The timeline. First thing, and again, I'm not going to use dates because I don't know them, is what is Timepiece Gentleman? It's essentially, as a lot of times people call it, a gray market watch dealer. I don't believe that's technically correct. It's a secondhand watch dealer. Gray market watch dealer, if I understand the definition properly, is someone who acquires their unworn stock from authorized dealers who are unloading it. I do not believe, but I do not know, but I do not believe that was how TPG or many of these businesses that people in the vernacular call gray market. I don't think they're actually really gray market. Joma's shop is gray market. A lot of these are people who have come to them with a watch to sell. They either buy the watch, or this is going to become a big theme today in our discussion about TPG, or they take the watch on consignment and do the sale as sort of the middleman, and they take a percentage of commission. So that's what TPG is they're a used watch dealer. But where their claim to fame happened is they were putting out on YouTube day in the life videos, day in the life of being a dealer, of a used watch dealer. And my understanding, again, that's not a format. I've seen a few, like I've seen some of the Luxury Bazaar ones, for example, which I think came later. I don't know if TPG was the first, but I think if they weren't, they're commonly credited as the first big one. And so that was sort of the claim to fame. So all of a sudden you have a business that makes money selling watches, but also had a pretty sizable viewership base in YouTube. And that's where a lot of people learned about them. That's how I heard about them. So that was the first part, the first step in the timeline. So red flags in terms of where people started to allege there were issues going on really cropped up with the introduction of a subscription Facebook group. Now, I was not initially aware when that launched, so my red flag moment came after this. But my understanding, and again, apologies because this was years ago, but I think TPG was rolling out a subscription service. I think it was $2,000 a year to gain access to essentially a private Facebook group that was going to allow folks to be able to go and make purchases at discount, I believe, of watches that they had in inventory. So it was sort of like a club. Like, think the way I would describe it is like, you ever remember the old Columbia thing where you buy the CDs for $1 and then it's kind of like that. But the idea is you get a discount. Maybe a better analogy would be like Costco or something, or Sam's Club, where you get a membership and then you get things at discount because you paid the membership. But obviously the membership entry fee was very, very high compared to something like that. I mean, $2,000 a year or one time or whatever. I mean, it's $2,000. It's a lot. Good morning, Kevin, by the way. Welcome to the live stream. Glad you could make it. So this was when some people started to get a little like, don't really understand or like what's going on here. We just wanted to watch videos, sort of thing. Okay. So let's jump to the next part. This is where I heard about them, the blackout. And in fact, I mentioned at the very start of my video, I have 2 videos ever that dealt with TPG. One was on some merch. There was like a lawsuit about unpaid merch. You can go find the video if you care about that. The lawsuit had been resolved by the time I did the video. I just walked through what it meant. And that was actually one I did after this video, the blackout video. And I do have a link in the description if you want to see my blackout video. The reason why I knew about this is that's all anyone talked about back when this happened. So long story short, Timepiece gentlemen turned off the lights. Like, their store was closed in Dallas. They were based in Dallas. They weren't putting out YouTube videos. People said they weren't getting messages to, like, if you texted them, you wouldn't hear back. I mean, it was a blackout. That's why it's called the blackout. And a lot of the other watch channels, especially a lot of the live stream ones, this was just like, it went for a week, only a week. It felt like a month though, just because there was so much content. And honestly, a lot of it was pretty insufferable. So the issue that because I mean, we were all no one knew anything. So we were all just regurgitating, or I should say they were all just regurgitating stuff. I did a video after the blackout ended. And again, you can watch it if you care. It's actually my most successful long form video, but I don't like doing drama topics, so I never really revisited it. And I said everything I had to say in that video. For those that don't know, I've been an executive director for a number of years of a nonprofit, and there was a nonprofit charitable aspect to why they claimed they did the blackout. And so I did an analysis of that, because and taking them at their word for why they did the blackout. But even with that context, there were some issues with how I didn't think they did it the right way. So that's the next part of the timeline. It was at this point that a lot of individuals who were either deeply following or loosely following TPG started to be very, very suspicious of them, because they had a follow-up video after the blackout. There were bank accounts that they claimed, alleged again in the video, that had been frozen for some reason. And they said they did all of this for charity, but it seemed very, very, and that's again where my video came in, was it doesn't, like, that strategy doesn't really make sense. Like, that's not the best way you could help a charity. It's not the best way in my view. Again, all just my opinion. But that was that next big flag. The third one in the timeline is the split. So TPG, as I'd mentioned, had been based in Dallas. They fragmented from part of the team. I think that now operates. I believe it's Grand Caliber. I don't watch the channel, so I'm sorry. I don't know a lot about that. But Anthony and his core TPG, what still I guess got to be thought of as Timepiece gentlemen, relocated to Los Angeles. Now, around this time, I don't remember if it was before the split or after, information came out on, I believe it was on Reddit, on the TP Gentleman subreddit, about him having ties in the past, at least, to being involved, alleged, again, I'll say alleged, with being an erotic masseuse. Now, Reddit, of course, has had a field day with that sort of content. But the thing I think intellectually about the business, why that was of interest, is there was often a lot of talk about investors, an investor. And then that started to make people wonder, is it really investors who believe in the business philosophy, or does he know people who are just giving him money to do this project with, who aren't actually analyzing that he's got good business acumen? So that was, at least to me, that was the interesting flag there was, okay, are the investors, they're not, maybe not investors in the traditional sense. It would be like, there's an example I'll use, you can tell from the playfield on my wall, and a lot of longtime viewers know I'm into pinball as my other hobby. We've had some instances of this with pinball, not involving like, backgrounds in masseusing or whatever, but like family giving people money and just, sometimes if you have money and you have family and they want to do something, you don't really analyze if it's a good or a bad idea. You just kind of like, here, take $5,000 and leave me alone. So, we've seen this in other things before. But again, if it's not like Shark Tank, real investors doing an analysis, looking over the books, now everyone's like, is this really a structured business, or is it just someone pontificating that they're a business person and they found other means to bring in capital to fund their strategy? So regardless of whether or not that was how that investment worked, because again, I have no idea. It may be legitimate investment, but a lot of people were questioning if it was at that stage. So the move to LA happens. It was really all this post blackout. The move to LA may have had logical reasons to it. I do not know. But at this stage, it started to feel like, I don't know if you've ever known a manic depressive, but sometimes they have depressive moments when they're down in the dumps, and other times when they're kind of manic and zany and they bounce around and they like to do a lot of stuff. There are different styles of manic depressive. So it's just one thing. And again, I should declare, in addition to not being a lawyer or a financial advisor, I am not a psychologist. But a lot of stuff starts to happen in LA that just seems really not watch selling oriented or really outlandish. And the next one I wanted to bring up was the Penthouse. So yeah, and I will touch a little bit on this at the end of the timeline, Critic Geek. So, and thank you. Welcome to the live stream, by the way. Apologies. Yeah, there's some stuff about some robberies. There's a lot of stuff that started to crop up. But the Penthouse was a strategy, again, that on paper didn't seem to make a lot of sense to some of us who are lay people, where it's like, they're going to rent a penthouse and they're going to convert it into a place to live / showroom with like giant aquarium. Again, I didn't watch the channel, so I'm only reading about this like on the subreddit. So there are all these items, these elements that, again, it's like, there's investing back in your business, or there's taking money out to keep as profit. But why would you invest in something like how is this supposed to sell more watches, right? It seemed more like it was a flex. And that's where I think a lot of questions started to come up were, okay, why is there so much of this sort of flex culture going on? And that, again, on the timeline, I'm going to blend some of it together, but we start to see like a lot, and TPG wasn't the only channel to do this, but like leasing luxury, supercars, Lambos and stuff, and having all of that. And it's kind of like, portraying this, an exceedingly high degree of success, just like money hand over fist. All of a sudden, anyone who gets into the watch game is wealthy. And again, this TPG may have been the first channel to push this, but they are by far not the only one to start kind of being like, the way I viewed it, and this may be unfair, is it's like selling secondhand watches in this fashion is much like being a used car salesman. But I don't normally associate used car salesmen with talking about, 2-story fish tanks and driving 3 different leased supercars. Maybe higher end ones do. I don't know. I'm not really savvy in that world. So that part of the timeline comes up. And then here's where kind of tying to there are a series of robberies that have been claimed. I think there were 3 different ones at various points, including one, I believe, before even the move happened. But all of a sudden, the penthouse falls apart. They don't stay there very long. I don't think it was ever furnished. And then all these other strategies start to come up into play, like doing an offer where if you buy a watch and it doesn't increase in value or you don't want it, they'll buy it back or something. I don't remember all the nuance to it, but again, it was odd. It wasn't like a, hey, you have 7 days to test out this watch, and if you don't like it, you can get your money back. It was like you could do this like months later. Again, it didn't make sense from a business strategy. And then there were training courses, like how to be a watch dealer, training courses. All in all, these are all just what I call alternative revenue schemes, where it was no longer about selling watches and making YouTube videos about the process of selling watches, but rather trying to diversify the income streams. But almost all of them were tied in some way to the watch side of the world. So it's just one of those things, and that came up in the process. That again, some people thought it was weird, more red flags. Other people thought, you know what, no, it makes sense. We get it. They're going all around and thinking it'd be well like here. And thanks for joining the live stream, Richie Luxury. Kind of pointed out that the argument that rich collectors would rather buy from a Ferrari driver, and I'm not a rich collector, so I've never thought about whether or not I cared I don't care what a seller sells or drives as a personal vehicle, but I don't swim in those waters. So this is not a space that I'm familiar with. So it's just one of those things. And yeah, it got a little, and again, when you're like relying on, again, the subreddit, while it has interesting information, there's a lot that just kind of gets reiterated over and over. And it does come across very soap opera like. So those sort of things, do happen. And good morning, Nicholas. Welcome to the live stream. Glad that you were able to make it. So that's the whole timeline as I wanted to cover it. So let's go ahead and let's start diving into why is this in the news again? Why am I bothering to do this as a live stream topic instead of talking about like the collapse on why Rado's used prices are terrible or things I normally talk about. So there have been a couple of videos that have come out, and some of the information involved have been released. I'll show you some stuff here in a moment, but the videos weren't the first thing that caused the trigger. There was a post, and I'll get to it in a moment, about a text message, and then there was another post. These are both on Reddit, and I have links to them in the description, about an audio recording that a alleged client did allegedly with Anthony of Timepiece Gentleman. But all right, so the start and these videos are linked as well. And I checked this morning; they're both still up on Anthony's. I think it's named under his name itself anymore, but it's still like the @Timepiece. Anyway, you can see it in the link. But so the first video I want to talk about is the one that came out maybe 3 days ago at this point, 2 or 3. And basically it's the rock bottom video is the title of it. It's a little bit longer title than that, but in that video, we won't play it here. You can go and watch it if you're interested. Anthony says that he apologizes, and he confirms that the text message that he sent to clients is real. Now, I have not seen a screenshot showing like the text message coming from his phone or whatever. We ain't doing investigations here. This is all alleged. We're just going to say alleged. I will share with you what was posted on Reddit, and this is what people assume is the content of the text message that he was purportedly acknowledging was indeed from him. I'm not going to read this aloud to you all. Again, the link is in the show notes. You can go to the Reddit and read all of this. The main thing to note is that in this alleged text message from him, he references an instance where there was a Richard Mille watch that he wore to an event, and that was lost. And as I recall in the narrative, at one point there was a claim that this was stolen, and there was a whole piece of drama. But again, I didn't watch the channel, so I don't know enough to dive in depth about that. I'd heard about the Richard Mille being gone, in some capacity gone. But according to this purported text message, what actually happened was it wasn't just the one watch. It was a bag of approximately $2 million in inventory, and that it was misplaced. So it's not in this text. It's not a claim of theft. It's a claim that it was basically lost. So anyway, the text goes on, talks a little bit about having, Anthony purportedly claiming, gambling issues, spending issues, alcohol issues, and that he tried to cover all of this up and then realized that was a problem and needs to try and dig himself out of this particular hole. So, okay. So that's the information that comes out of that text message. And in this video, he says that text message is real. He talks about how he lied about a robbery. I don't know if that meant all of them or not, again, because I believe there had been 3 claims. I think one of the 3 was that Richard Mille, but again, they all kind of blend together when you're just reading about them on Reddit. So he claimed that wasn't true. He talks a little bit in the text message touched on this as well about living a fake lifestyle, that his desire was to portray success and that resulted in starting to spend money that didn't really belong to him. So he claimed that he didn't address things when they didn't work for him because he thought that looked like he was admitting that he had failed and he didn't want to be seen as a failure. And he said in the video that it was wrong to spend other people's money and live a flex lifestyle. So that's where a lot of this stuff is coming out now is the discussion points are that there was all this money that these watches were consigned. So he didn't buy them. They weren't his business's property. He had contracts to consign the watch and then sell it for the buyer. He gets a percentage. I believe 5% is what I've commonly seen. And then they would be sent the balance as a model. So that's how a lot of these watches were moved. And so the concern, the allegation here, which appears to be admitted to in the video, was yes, I kept the money after the watches were gone. Not in the case of the misplacement, but like I think someone used the reference. It might have been Anthony, the robbing Peter to pay Paul strategy. Some people call it a Ponzi. A Ponzi, though, I believe, is very specific to like an investment strategy. This would be more along the lines of just regular fraud, I think. But again, I'm not a legal expert or a financial expert, though I do know David, who is in the chat, and welcome to the live stream, David, is a financial advisor, though out of Canada, but we still like him anyway. Who asks, do you think the rise in interest rates had an effect on his ability to service debt? No, I'm not sure that it's debt in the traditional sense. So that's not been my read on it. But I don't know. And as Richie has noted in chat, if you've met Anthony, I know that he's very charismatic. I have not met him, but I have heard multiple people say, yes, he is extremely charismatic. And of course, yes, it's a trust-based industry. So it's been very interesting. This hadn't been, again, Reddit is Reddit and they're going to say what they're going to say, but all this stuff starts to come out more and more. And then this text message that was on Reddit was purportedly sent to all of the clients who money was owed to. I don't know how many that is. I thought I had read somewhere, but I couldn't find it when I was doing my new research this morning, that it was on the order of 40 something, like mid 40s, around 44 or so. Though most of the volume, and actually we'll get to that in a video here later in the video. So let me realign to the timeline so I can continue before I lose total track of my mind. And incidentally, I need my Coke Zero at this point. I'm talking too much. Apologies. So he goes on in the video. This is chronologically in the video. Says that the voice recording was real. And you're probably like, well, what voice recording are we talking about? So again, this isn't going to be nearly as helpful when you jump to it, but there was another Reddit post. You see that says the video is unavailable. However, if you look in the comment section, there are people that have claimed to have uploaded it to like a Google Drive. I think there was further down, there's something about it being on someone else's YouTube channel. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Purportedly, a client recorded this. I've seen part 1 and part 2. And I think they claimed it was a 15-minute call and that was going to be broken up into something like 5 or 6 parts. But I've only seen part 1 and part 2. And anyway, his video that we're talking about claimed that purports that this alleged video was indeed true. That alleged video, as I recall from it, said initially that in the conversation between Anthony and the purported client, that the amount of debt was $5 million. Now, in addition, that's actually going to come up here in the video in a little bit, but there was also an element in one of those two parts, I don't remember which, where I believe Anthony told the client that his plan was he was going to dig himself out of the hole by selling watches, and that he estimated that he would be able to sell 3 watches a day at $2,000 profit per watch, so $6,000 per day profit, and he would use that to dig himself out of the hole. So that was what was claimed there. So Richie comments that phone call was recorded without Anthony's consent, which is illegal in California. Again, I'm not an attorney. However, if the client was in a different state, that state's rules may apply. So, for example, I live in Kansas. In Kansas, as long as one person on the call consents, it's legal. So if I was on a phone call with someone in California and I in Kansas wanted to recall it, California law would not apply. Kansas law would apply. So it varies by state is my point. If both the client and Anthony are in California, then Richie's statement is my understanding. My understanding is California does require all parties to consent. But again, that it's a state law. So it depends if you're doing an interstate conversation or not. But again, I'm not an attorney, so don't take that as legal advice. This is my layperson's interpretation. Going on, though, in the YouTube video, Anthony does confirm the $5 million debt. That's $5 million, $3 million of which is just between two clients, one of whom he described as an investor. He didn't describe what the other client was. And he wraps up the video by acknowledging that he may end up in prison. He claims he's not going to file for bankruptcy or flee the country, and that he's going to try and fix it. But at the time of that video recording, he says he doesn't know how he's going to fix it, but that he will take steps to resolve the situation. So, okay, we're almost through all the main stuff. This is going fairly smooth. I'm pleased. So there was a second video released the next day, so it's like a day ago. In terms of when we're doing this live stream, and obviously do the math if you're watching the recorded version. So Anthony says in the second video, this was kind of titled, I'm just paraphrasing the title. There's a link in the description. You can watch these videos. They're still up, at least as of the start of this. I checked them an hour ago. How to Solve the $5 million Debt is basically the title of the video. He states that when others get in a situation like him, he means other watch dealers, they go ghost. That was his quote, go ghost, whereas he's going to keep all his social media accounts active and talk to people. Now, I did recall before even the text message came out, if I remember the timeline correctly, he did state, because people on Reddit were kind of poking fun at it, that he was going ghost mode. I don't know what that means, but I guess it means something different than what he means here, or he's changed his mind. But again, that was before all of this information came out, via this text message and this $5 million debt. It was just more of taking a pause from social media, if I remember correctly. Not a big deal, but I just thought it was interesting language. They used the phrase ghost in both instances. He rants for a little bit about haters. He does get a lot of hate on Reddit, so I'm sure that's what that was in response to. He mentioned some death threats that he was getting, which wouldn't shock me. I've heard Reddit has been tied to things like that before also. So he does also say that some people who he owes money to have chosen to give him a chance to show what he can do to try and make it right. Okay. So my thought, this is just me, my allegation is that's probably the $3 million, like the two with the $3 million, that maybe he's got them on board with a strategy. So, because that would be the bulk of his debt. And conceptually, in theory, it would be easiest to satisfy as few people as possible, and most of the debt is in the hands of a couple of individuals. Winning them on board can conceptually solve a big part of your problem if you were trying to do something like this. He argues that that if the haters are successful in crushing his strategy, I think is maybe a better way to describe it. But he says crushing him, but that it really only hurts those who he owes money to, because his success in implementing his strategy to pay everyone back is the only way that people can be made whole. So if you try and stop him from doing it, he argues, then all you're really doing is hurting everyone who he owes money at this stage. He claims he's going to post daily videos updating what his status is on the process of fixing this. He claims that the process to fix the $5 million in debt will take more than 6 months. And he says maybe as long as a year. And finally, he does yet again, just like he did in the prior video I talked about, he apologized to everyone who he wronged, but he did note that businesses fail. So that's why it's being discussed now, and why I thought it was probably a good topic to talk about. And there are a few pieces to it that I'm interested in. Now, one of them, this is just my overall assessment part. This is the this is the final part of the video. So we didn't have to spend too long on the timeline, which is good, because I don't really consume Anthony's content, and he don't know me any money. So this is just, thinking about the impact on the hobby, I guess. And I approach this as a hobbyist. I think the main question of discussion is, what's Consignment's future in watches in the wake of this? Because this is getting a lot of attention, and more other YouTube channels are touching on it. Particularly, I should say, those that sell watches are touching on it, who sell them in this fashion, this secondhand fashion, where maybe they've done consignments. And that really varies a lot. There are a lot of secondhand sellers that don't do consignment at all. It sounds like Anthony was very much using the a highly consignment model. I don't know if he was 100% consignment though. My overall take, and I'd be interested to see your guys' thoughts in the live chat if you're here live. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment, of course, if you think it has an impact. I think it does. I don't think you ever get rid of consignment outright. There are too many people that won't know about this, even as big of a news as this is to like watch enthusiasts. The watch buying public, the majority of them don't go around consuming Reddit and YouTube and all of this stuff. They just buy watches. So, in that regard, there will always be a marketplace to do consignment. I do think that that we'll see a decrease in it, because its trustworthiness has definitely been called into question given what happened. Set aside, allegations, even if they're, self-admitted, because again, none of this is worked through a legal process. This is where we're saying alleged allegations of fraud, misuse, purported admissions aside, just losing $2 million in inventory. The suggestion would be, like, in my head, that wouldn't have been a problem, quote unquote problem, if they had been properly insured as a business for the loss, right? Like, normally, if you lose something and you have insurance, you cover your deductible and you're made whole. So the issue of if someone's going to be in the space of doing a business like this, taking consignments and not insuring them, like, how would you know? Would you ever even think to ask? I don't. Outside of like a contractor asking to see their contracting insurance, I think I did that on a deck build. That's it. I don't normally ask people, what's your insurance status like, before I do business with them. I don't even think about it. So that sort of thing. Like, I think a lot of people it didn't cross their mind. Like, wait a moment, are all of these secondhand dealers actually insured for my consignment? What happens if the consignment is stolen, lost, or destroyed in some capacity? I think we think about it when we ship watches, because it's very, very common to be told, like, if you're selling through Chrono24, be sure to fully insure the shipment, because you're going to have to pay them back otherwise, and that's what insurance is for. So those sort of things, I think, are red flags now, and I think a lot of people are just going to be like, I just don't trust consignment, and are going to back away from that model, because it's going to be easier to back away from it than it's going to be going in and asking for all this insurance status stuff. So in my assessment, I think that's probably the fallout, is less people are gonna go the consignment route. Which, honestly, I'm not a big fan of the consignment route. This is my personal take. The issue is that consignment is kind of like I think the person who owns the watch thinks it's the best way to maximize dollars without doing work. Like, the best way, if you want to maximize the amount of money you're going to get on a watch, is pretty straightforward. You need to sell it yourself. You don't want to lose any fees, you sell it on a forum. You're okay losing some fees, you can sell it on eBay or Chrono24. If you want cash quickly and you don't want to own the watch anymore, you sell it to a secondhand dealer that will buy the watch. But they want to make profit and they have to sell the watch. They're going to sell the watch at least at market value. So they're going to pay you less. And that's the price you get for unloading, but they usually will take just about anything. So, anything that they could potentially sell. So I think a lot of people turn to consignment when they're like, I don't want to do the work of like selling on Chrono 24, but I also don't want to, not get 25% of the value because I sold it to a secondhand dealer direct. So let's do consignment. I think it's out of a, I don't want lazy is the word I'm leaning to. That might be a little unfair. I think they see it as a way to maximize pretty much without doing as much work. But the advantage is really to the person accepting the consignment because they don't need to have a lot of capital to, in theory, sling a lot of high dollar products because on principle, they just get paid out of the consignment once the watch sells. So it's very low barrier of entry to become a consignment sale. Entities, like even with all the criticism that Crown and Caliber, for example, is getting right now about being difficult for especially people trying to sell watches, the idea is if you sell it to them, they're going to catch you a check. You're going to get paid. It's not a question of something happening to the watch at that point or not. It's just one of those things. I want to catch up a little bit on chat. I don't know anything about Austin Mountains tuna, so I'm not going to bring that one up. Richie posts chat comment. If any dealer posts disparaging comments, could Anthony sue for defamation of character? Again, I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice. Possibly. However, there's one thing to always remember with defamation. The truth is always a defense against defamation. So if there's an aspect that they say something disparaging and there's truth to it, or they can point to why there's a high likelihood that you could argue that it was true, that would mean no potential for defamation. Likewise, if they say these are, well, again, kind of like how when I'm doing a discussion, there's a reason why we talk about things as allegations. And that's because an allegation is just a claim. We're not saying the person did this. We're saying there's a claim out there that did that. Now, I don't think that's what Richie was getting at because I think everyone's pretty familiar with why the news always says alleged, alleged, alleged. So, there's no issue. But there's a potential, but they would have to. It's defamation claims. Again, I'm not an attorney, but having talked to attorneys, defamation claims are usually very, very, very difficult to win, especially in the United States. Like in the UK, defamation is a lot easier. It's a lower standard to win on. That's why you see successful suing of UK-based tabloids a lot. In the US, difficult, especially if you can be seen as a quote unquote public figure. And I have no idea what the thresholds are on that. But given his relative fame via YouTube, he might be seen as a public figure. But that would be up to the courts. I highly doubt that would be a lawsuit worth pursuing. Plus, you have to explain how that defamation did damage and all of that. It's complicated. Again, I've never studied it, so it's just other than reading up on it. So it's complicated. Nicholas says, how is he going to get inventory to sell to get out of the hole if no one trusts him and he has no money? Well, from what I understand, the strategy that he's doing is, because I think I saw a subsequent post. I don't have a link to this, so apologies. It's not a link in the chat or in my video description. But he has, I think basically he's working as a salesman on commission. Sounds like how I would describe the strategy. He might still be thinking of it as a consignment model, but I think the way it's working is he's using his social platforms because of the quantity of followers he has. And some of these individuals, maybe they're those that have, my impression was at least some with, I'm assuming one of the people he has a lot of debt with, again, an assumption, is a watch dealer. Like they were consigning with him to help move their products. But it might not be the case at this stage. But regardless, I think what he's doing is listing other dealers' watches. He's not possessing them. So there's no concerns about control of the inventory. They'll ship them out. They'll hold the inventory. They'll provide the photos. And if he gets the sale, then he gets like the 5% commission. So basically functioning as a salesperson, perhaps for multiple dealers. And then in theory, on principle, this could work in principle. And that would be like, think 5% at a time. And then you reinvest all that profit back into your debt. Or if the deal is actually with, like if the 3 million out of the 5 million, if 2 million of that is with one watch dealer and he's selling for them and they're just shaving it down 5% at a time, you could see how that would conceptually work, right? So on paper, it works. The problem in my head canon is the volume of debt is it's absurdly high. I think it's real easy not to recognize how many zeros that is and how slow of a process that is at the 5%. So here's what I mean. In one of those recordings, the audio recordings that I mentioned earlier that he talked about in his first video, as I recall hearing in the audio, he did, and again, I'm not binding, I have no grounds to bind anyone to anything. I'm not binding him to this, but his speculation in the audio, as I recall, was that he thought he would be able to make about $2,000 per watch sale, and that he thought he'd sell 3 watches a day. And so, long story short, he imagined himself having $6,000 of income a day that I assume that he could place towards the debt. That would 100% be placed towards the debt. In this scenario, though, with $5 million of debt, again, I mentioned in that first video, he said it was going to take more than 6 months to pay this off. And he said, I think this is a paraphrase, not an exact quote, maybe as long as a year. So he suggested it could be as long as 12 months. If his $5 million debt is accurate and his estimate of $6,000 a day to service the debt is accurate, that cannot be done in a year. That is going to take 2 years, and it's got 2.28 years or something. It's like 2 years and a quarter of a year. So it can't be done in 1 year unless the debt's lower than he said, or he makes more than $6,000 a day. But that $6,000 a day, that's 365 days a year is how I did that math. That's no days off. That's every single day, $6,000 of income. And even at that, $6,000, and that's, I mean, think $6,000 a day is huge. I mean, that you'd be really successful moving $6,000 a day that you got to keep as profit. I mean, that's over $2 million in a year. I spent my career in nonprofit and in government. We don't think in those terms on a personal level. So to me, it seems astronomical. However, I just think that that level of sell through would be, the problem is, it's not a large store. Like, you could look at Watchfinder and say, could they make $6,000 a day in profit? Sure, but they've got $1,000 or 1,000 watches plus in inventory. So they've just got, if you're only doing like 3 or 5 watches, not only do you need to make the sales, you only can appeal to a certain number of people with the certain number of watches you have. Now, if he's got arrangements with dealers and access to their inventory, his numbers may be bigger than what I'm thinking, and that may make it more likely. But I find that I would describe it as far-fetched. I don't think 6,000 a day consistently is realistic for him. But that's pure speculation on my part. And obviously, he would be quite capable of proving me wrong if that is indeed the case. Let me catch up a little bit on comments. Neff says, I think the last thing TPG wants to do is sue for defamation and open themselves up to discovery. Yeah, there is a discovery process that does kick in at that point. It's just not most people, whenever I've seen defamation stuff, it's usually, sometimes people will threaten it to try and scare people off. But again, what would a discovery process be when you come out on a video and say, oh, well, there was this text message that everyone's talking about. Oh, it's real. And oh, there was this audio recording. And oh, it's real. So acknowledging these sort of things, makes it a little bit off in my mind, as well as being an unlikely strategy. Richie says, wristwatch check. I apologize, I didn't do it at the start of the video. I'll de-snap it. Not anything I think he would be selling on the TPG channel, but this is the Zenith Chronomaster Original. So the 38 millimeter. Sorry for the blur. My little cheapy Logitech is not cooperating. So yeah, I got this a little while ago. I think a couple months ago at this point. And I like how it wears. Wears really comfortable. I hadn't worn it in a while, so I got it a couple days ago. And I've been wearing it around, and I enjoy how it wears. And it's fun to see this is the one where the little hand goes around once every 10 seconds on the dial. So more of an Easter egg. Practicality, I probably don't have the thumb reaction speed anymore to honestly get an accurate 1/10 of a second read, but cool concept. And I liked this one because it doesn't have that bezel like the sports do, which look like Daytonas to me, and I didn't want to watch that. Was kind of looking homage-y. My only concern was that this would be too small, and it's not. It's not too small for me to read. So continuing with our overall assessment discussion, so I've talked about the 6K a day. Another thing is in the second video, he has a line that I'm not a fan of it. I'll say it that way. So Anthony says something about that if anyone tries to, I think the word, as I said from his video, was crush him. If anyone tries to crush him, it's just going to hurt the victims, hurt the people who he owes money to. The thing is, I found that sort of statement to be a relatively common strategy from people who don't, to try and discourage them from taking legal action. So you say, hey, if you interfere with my, like, I have a plan, and if you interfere with my plan, all you're going to do is hurt people who have already been hurt. You won't hurt me, you're going to hurt everyone else. And that is something that's come up a lot in, again, as you can tell from my play field on my wall, that's come up in the pinball hobby. And I've been in the pinball hobby over a decade. So, and I don't want to bore everyone with pinball stuff, but I'll tell this one really quick. So in pinball, we've seen some startups that have a game idea, and then all of a sudden things aren't going right. And they will make a statement like this, or it's actually less the companies and more the people who are owed money. So the people who have, they pre-order, the game ain't happening, everyone's panicking, and some of the pre-order people come out and they go, guys, don't report this as fraud. Don't contact the, and in pinball, it's been more of like don't contact the licensor and tell them it's falling apart because I won't get my game. We need to stay the course. We need to stay the course and hope that they can figure it out, or hope they can find more pre-orders to bring in enough money. And then they'll start making, it'll all cascade and we'll make enough money and everyone will be okay. It has pretty much never worked in pinball. Now, pinball is way smaller than watches, way smaller. The only instance I can give you of a pinball example that ever worked out, kind of, is a company called Dutch Pinball, based in the Netherlands. They make a pinball machine based off of the Big Lebowski. Very popular, pretty fun too. I've played it. They did a pre-order model, and they had a contract manufacturer arranged to do the build. The problem is the deal with the contract manufacturer fell apart, and they no longer had enough money because they were using the pre-order money to get things going. They no longer had enough cash on hand to fully refund, because they'd spent some of it, fully refund the pre-orderers, nor enough money to build the games for all of them. So what they have done is kind of akin to what, and there were no allegations of fraud or anything with Dutch that I recall. It was all just business, actually, just it went bad. It went bad. And what they were able to do is they made arrangements. Dealers would take and hold money in escrow, basically, for new Lebowski sales. As those games were built, they would be paid for that game. And Dutch Pinball would make pre-orderers whole by sending them a game every few new sales that they had. And I don't remember the range. It's somewhere, I think, in 4 to 6. Every 4 to 6 new sales, they would send a pre-orderer their game. This was less than $5 million worth of, I don't remember how much it was. It was less than $5 million, though, in terms of total debt. They're still doing it. They've been at it for years. This was all being done before the pandemic happened. So it just takes a really long time. And that's without any allegations of misuse. Like, I'd never recalled hearing people accuse the Dutch pinball, or self-admitting the Dutch pinball people going on video saying, they have problems with alcohol or gambling or whatever. It was just, our deal with our contract manufacturer fell apart. They're building them themselves, and some of them are volunteering their old time. That's another difference I think is worth pointing out. In that case, in the case of pinball, they're making a product. They're not trying to get a hold of product and move it, like Trade Wars. I don't know if you ever played like the old, I think it was a BBS game or a video game, Trade Wars. Buy low, sell high. That's like what this watch secondhand thing is, buy low, sell high. That's not what the pinball thing was. It was make a product and then make money on your creation. So it's different. It's different, but it's the best analogy. I could do a argument, but I'm not. I'm doing pinball because that's my hobby. So that's the closest example I ever had, and a lot of different things going on there. So there's that. And then he did mention in his first video about he has no plans to declare bankruptcy. And again, not a financial advisor, and I'm not an attorney. Declaration of bankruptcy, honestly, is if the allegations, including his own allegations about his behavior, are true, may be moot. And the reason is, in the United States, bankruptcy is not a shield from fraud. And I have a pinball example for this as well. There was a company out of Texas called Deep Root Pinball, and it was actually a conglomeration of entities. Pinball was one subdivision, but allegedly the proprietor was selling life insurance policies to investors, like dead peasant policies, where you get paid out once the policy is used, essentially. And so that money from the investors was supposed to go into those life insurance policies, and instead the allegation is it got funneled into pinball and some other projects. There was an attempt by the company to declare bankruptcy, and I think the bankruptcy part has already said those elements are not shielded by bankruptcy protection. In fact, when I was doing my research today, there was a case earlier this year with the U.S. Supreme Court. It's Barton Werfer versus v. Buckley, if you want it. Barton Werfer v. Buckley, which even said in the U.S., unanimous decision, by the way, as I recall, that even if you don't know about the fraud, bankruptcy can't shield you. So we don't do bankruptcy shielding for that sort of. So there's a difference between a business failure, like the business lost money and your creditors are out of luck, versus if you were to sell a consignment watch and keep 100% of the money and not and you break your contract, it's a different boat in that case. So whether or not he would or wouldn't consider declaring bankruptcy, it might not be relevant in this case. Again, if the allegations are indeed substantive. So those were the main elements I wanted to touch on. So let me go ahead and catch up here on chat again. I need more Coke Zero. I feel like I don't normally prattle on this long. So Justin, and welcome to the live stream, Justin. I don't think I welcomed you earlier. Who would want to trust Anthony? Only a new person coming into a market, and a simple Google search will show all of this. Again, it's on paper, I wouldn't personally, but sometimes people don't do good research. Sometimes people might already know him, but you did say a new person. So yeah, I think it would be very, very difficult. But again, if what he's doing is, as I've understood it, is explained, if he's just trying to sell and he can reassure people, you're not going to send the money to me, it's going to go through the dealer I'm selling on behalf of. I'm basically like he's a contractor. He's just going to get a commission if he makes the sale, but he won't touch the money and he won't touch the watch. That might be enough to alleviate a lot of people's concerns. That would be the hypothetical that I think that might be the case. Richie says, isn't it in the consignment victim's interest to give Anthony a chance to make it right? Or would insurance be a quicker option? Insurance would probably be quicker, would be my guess, Richie, but I'm not sure. And again, I don't know the new, I've never, I carry a policy for my watches, like my luxury ones, which I know will protect me from theft. But I don't know how it works. Like if you consign to someone and then they didn't pay you what you were supposed to get. I mean, you were still the watch owner, so maybe I'm too ignorant of it to say. If the claim was valid, I think, I don't know. I've done a few insurance claims, not on my watch policy, but my insurance claims have always been resolved within 60 days. So that would almost assuredly be faster than, even Anthony thinks he's going to take at least 6 months with his, what I feel are very optimistic estimates. So yeah, I would say if insurance was an option, insurance would be quicker. But yeah, I could see where everyone who's a consignment victim would think him trying to make it whole would be better than, let's say there was no allegations of fraud, or the determination is there was no fraud. And so that was just a business issue, right? And my point being, let's assume bankruptcy protection did kick in. I could see where they could say, well, I'd rather him have the chance to fully refund me rather than get pennies on the dollar, which is what normally would at best happen with a bankruptcy. So I could see mentally that might be the analysis. However, if there's no confidence that if they don't believe that he can actually pull it off, they might rather just get a bird in hand is worth more than two in shrubbery or some, whatever the saying is. So there, you can come at it from so many different angles. So, I could see the argument where they'd be like, I'd rather him try. And there are others who just come and be like, I'm done and I want out of it. I could see it both ways. Problem is, if he does actually have 40 plus people who have been impacted, this could be very, very challenging. Now, if most of those are very low sum, he could, especially if the people with the larger debts are willing to play the long game, he could, in theory, shuffle the deck chairs, pay the lower, get as many people off of the books as quickly as possible, pay who you owe the least up front, pay them up front, and go to the bigger people towards the end, just to remove the number of people who are involved. Yeah, in terms of, and bear in mind on the criminality aspects. And again, not an attorney, but the decision to pursue something criminally isn't really up to the consigners, right? This isn't like the whole I want to press charges sort of thing. Like if the government thinks something's happened, like the a case in point would be the IRS. My understanding of the IRS, for example, is if you even if you were to do something illegal to generate funds, you owe taxes on it. And if you didn't pay the taxes, and that's not part of this discussion, but I'm just saying, like, they don't wait to have a victim say, he committed some crime. They do their own analysis and decide if they want to pursue something. That's what happened with that deep root pinball example. And that's a civil case, incidentally, with I believe the SEC. Like, they're choosing to do that because of what happened with the insurance policies. That none of those pinball machines got made and sold, and whatever with pre-order money is tangential to the issue. So what are the criminal allegations against Anthony, asks Neff. My understanding is that it's selling consignment watches, and then instead of paying the owner of the watch their share, the 95% of the sale price, that the money was kept and spent on his personal lifestyle. That's the allegation. And so that's where the things about like what Critic has said, where people reference the word Ponzi, and I think, again, I'm not an expert on it, little misused, I think, a little bit, but because I think Ponzi's are very much about tied to investment itself. This might be more accurate. The allegation might be more accurately described as embezzlement or some form of fraud. But it conceptually, I think of it the same way. That sort of, anytime we think of a pyramid, we kind of just say Ponzi. So I'm not trying to nerd out on the language too much. Just as an FYI, if you see, if there were official documents, don't be shocked if like Ponzi isn't explicitly stated in that regard. But and I did think I saw a post here from Comic. Welcome to the live stream, by the way. I think going to insurance would be the quicker option, though I guess it would also bring the insurance companies in to be able to press charges. Well, I just don't know enough about the policy to say, like, again, yeah, maybe, because my assumption has to be that it's the owner of the watch who would have to file the claim, because logically, if Anthony had insurance, business insurance, to protect his inventory that he's holding on consignment, then when the bag he alleged went misplaced with the $2 million in inventory happened, he could have just filed the insurance claim and paid the deductible. I talked a little bit about that earlier. So I assume, and I do not know, I assume he does not have business insurance for inventory that he's carrying around on his person, because I can't fathom why he wouldn't have invoked it if he did. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. But anyway, it's being discussed. So I thought it would be, I like to do a little Saturday live stream for folks, and I thought it would be a interesting topic to try and catch up on. For me, because again, I don't really watch Anthony's content. I've never consigned with him. The fate of this one way or the other doesn't impact me. My curiosity is really more on what does this mean long term for the consignment side of the watch industry. I've never done consignment with watches either. I've either sold my watches directly, or I've traded them with larger secondhand dealers, like brick and mortar secondhand dealers that operate in order to get a different watch that I want. So that's just been my approach. But again, I know some of these individuals deal in very, very high dollar pieces, and I generally, my luxury watches generally aren't, at that level. So a different scenario for me versus everyone else. But anyway, I only had about enough time for an hour. Thank you, everyone in the chat. I see it was really active. I tried to hit on some of the more interesting comments. Apologies if you felt neglected. Some of them went by and I didn't catch it because I'm got my notes and stuff up. But if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give it a like. It does help the channel out. I don't normally cover this sort of content though, so if it's not, if this is the thing you like, I probably won't normally have videos that are of interest to you. So out of fairness, I'm just disclosing that. And anyway, I don't know what next week's topic will be. I don't know what next week's, if I'm going to have time to do a pre-recorded video, no idea. But I will plan to do another video on Saturday, like I've been for the last few months, just as something fun to do. So anyway, That's it. Thanks, everyone. Have a really good weekend. And I hope y'all take care. See you later.